Hello, I'm Sven, and today I want to talk about a serious topic, hobo abuse. Well, I'm not gonna talk about American migrant workers, probably that's a very serious topic too. I want, of course, talk about hobo stoves. I'm using them since forever and a day, and there was only a short period of time at the very beginning when I'm starting bushcraft and trekking and so on, when I'm using gas stove. After that, I went directly and seamlessly to hobo stoves, which I used over years and years. I started, of course, with the self-made IKEA hobo stove, and after that, I tried several different kinds of hobo stoves. So I have plenty of experience with a lot of different stoves because that has always been my favorite way to cook my food when I'm in the woods, at least if that's possible and there is no fire ban or something like that. If I'm not able to use the hobo stove as I like, I'm using the Trangia, which I used a lot as well, and it's always gonna be my second place, and the hobo stoves, is the first place because I really like to make my food with my hobo stove. In this video, I just want to provide you with some tips and tricks that some of you might not know and that would help you to use your hobo stove for many years without damaging it. I'm pretty sure some of you might get angry when the hobo stove gets deformed over time and you did not know why and how that happened. But good thing is you can prevent that, and if you keep some things in mind, it's really easy to prevent that. Because the main reason why that did happen is because, like I said earlier, it was used wrong. The material deforms when you use it wrong. For example, if you make a really strong irregular heat, when you do that, the build quality did not matter because the material has no other chance than to deform, and that's only because of physics. Hobo stoves only need 3 types of twigs or wood or however you want to call it. First of all, you need some kindling. For this pile, you use wood with the thickness of the pinky finger bones max. The second pile will be the wood you use for the start to feed the smaller flames from the kindling. For this pile, use wood with the thickness of the pinky itself. The last pile you're gonna need is for longer term heat that did not burn as fast but provides heat for longer time. That would be wood with the thickness of your thumb. Everything bigger than that did not belong in the hobo stove. It will work, of course. You can use wood with the thickness of your forearm, but that's gonna be nonsense. You did not need more than these 3 piles I explained, and that is one of the mistakes I see really often, using way too thick wood. Another mistake I see a lot is to put way too much wood into the poor stove, then light it up and get a crazy big flame so you could cook 3 feet over ground if you like, and well, that's nonsense as well, because that will damage the stove over time simply because physics works and the stove gets deformed over time. That's because the material heats up very fast, then cools down a little, then heats up again very fast, and so on and so on. And so the material is heated up very unequally, and the metal gonna react to that, and that's normal. And you can prevent that if you heat it up so unequally. But gladly, that's preventable as well. Don't fill up the hobo stove to the edge to start it with your kindling. Instead, just fill up the lower third of the stove, and that's more than enough for the whole cooking process. The opening to put more fuel in is in exact that height, and that's for a reason. The next thing I see a lot is that people put a lot of wood in the stove very fast. Please just use the filling hatch, and if you can't, there's probably too much wood already inside the stove. Although the pieces of wood you're gonna use to fuel the hobo stove should fit the stove in length as well. There's no need to use any bigger pieces of twigs than that. And you really do not have to fuel it non-stop until nothing else fits anymore. That ensures uneven heating again, and it will deform the material. And additionally, there will be much more soot and smoke, and there will be much more unburned pieces in the end as well. When the hobo stove is used properly, there will be just a little bit of white ash in the end, and like I said, if used correctly, there is much less smoke and soot. So it's really up to you how long you can use your hobo stove and how much fun is going to be. Just be patient and fuel the stove little by little and not very fast and way too much in a short period of time. An additional tip to prevent smoke is just remove the bark of every piece of wood you're going to use, because the bark contains a lot of moisture and will so produce a lot of smoke as well. And I'm pretty sure you have more fun using it when there is not that much smoke. Another way to keep in mind that you don't use too thick piles of wood is that the only tool you're gonna need to process the wood for the hobo stove is a jackknife. Everything too big for a jackknife to be processed is too big for the hobo stove. And most of the time you won't even need a jackknife. You can just use the twigs and so on the tree, or when it's laying on the ground, when it's dry, you won't even need a jackknife. You can just break the twigs with your bare hands. But keep in mind, if the wood you're gonna use is too big for a jackknife, then it's probably too big for the hobo stove as well. If you need the hardwood because everything else is soaking wet or so, of course, then you need another tool than a jackknife. But in most cases, you're going to find something on the ground. Or even better, dead but still on the tree, so that it's not directly in the ground when it's wet on there. If you keep that in mind, you will get a much more smooth fire to cook on. And if you feel it little by little, just watch the fire, and if it gets a little weaker, just put 1 or 2 twigs inside. You will see it holds the heat much better without any peaks. And since we want to prevent any high peaks in any direction, that's a good thing. So just remember, you just want a steady little fire in your hobo stove. And if you have the steady fire I'm talking about, a hobo stove will last for years and years, and it's much easier to cook your meal on if you have not the extreme spikes I'm talking about. Well, basically that's it. There's not much more to talk about. If you never used a hobo stove before or didn't know why your hobo stove deforms over time, I hope this video is gonna be useful and can prevent that from happening again or ever. Some might think of an hobo stove as another version of a bonfire, and I really get that. But the stove is not made to be a campfire, which goes on and on for hours and hours. A stove is a stove, and the campfire feeling while using it is just a pleasant side effect, but not its purpose. Just keep that in mind, or just use it as a bonfire, but then you have to live with it when it deforms, and you can't complain about the material or the build quality or something like that, because that's not the fault of the hobo stove, it's just the fault of the user. But if you want to use it that way, that's fine as well, of course. So if you have any questions, just leave a comment. And I really would be interested in how you gonna use the hobo stove. So if you want to share that, just leave a comment. Take care.